historical CHANG Moldova. This is in our hands. We can take it, but we can waste it. The position of my country is very strong. You know that we were supporters from the first day. And I think Ukrainian people, Moldovan people deserve, because they put so much effort to implement the recommendations of European Commission, they deserve positive outcome. Whether we will be able to take this positive outcome and to take the decisions, we will see today. But my point is, if we will spoil or if we will abuse the unanimity principle, there will be more and more voices asking why we still take the decisions on the consensus basis. So for my country, which is benefiting from the unanimity principle, because this is a small-sized country, like Hungary, for example, it's very important to keep this principle. But we should not abuse this principle and to use this very correctly and very fairly. We'll see.
Is Viktor Orban...
Yes, other countries waiting too. My friends from Georgia really did a lot in order to implement reforms too. Yes, there are always some issues which could be discussed in the future, but right now we have the political situation where we can take the decisions. And decisions not only regarding Ukraine, Moldova, but Georgia, Bosnia and Herzegovina. For me, it's very simple question and answer. My country benefited a lot from the membership in the European Union. Economic skyrocketing, innovations, green investments and so on. GDP per capita grew from 42% in 2003 to 90% right now of European Union average. So my question is, why the people outside of European Union should not deserve the same? To deserve normal life, to deserve prosperity, rule of law and so on, and etc.
What would be the signal? What would be the signal if you couldn't convince?
On 50 billion euros. I hope very much that we will find a formula because 50 billion euros is the matter of today. We should not postpone this decision because Ukraine is not fighting tomorrow. Ukraine is fighting right now. And of course it has enormous implications on the economy. So we need financial flows in order to preserve the country. And I hope that we will find this strong political will, maybe putting aside other issues, which are also important, but putting aside them to find what is really the issue number one.
What was the 10 billion that the Commission released yesterday?
Well, I don't want to talk about Mr. Orban. I already told what they wanted. And I hope very much that during our discussions we will find the arguments. But if some people are not listening to the arguments, then the situation becomes very complicated.
What's the 10 billion that the Commission released yesterday to Hungary?
Well, those are different tracks, please. Those are different tracks, and I don't treat it as exchange, as a bazaar. Those are different tracks, and I think that we should not, let's say, sell the principle for money. It's absolutely inappropriate for European Union as a community.
But didn't that happen?
Okay, time is more, maybe there is some coincidence, but I treat those two issues as separate. And the most important issue is, if we are talking about the decision, not the implementation of reforms in Hungary, but implementation of reforms in Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia. Those are critical factors in order to decide.
What would be the...
Because I also need to give him space.
Yeah. Or lean a little bit more forward, then your head is a little bit lower. Possible, yeah?
how are you?
Here we are.
Maybe good morning. Good morning.
Hello.
We will have very important council meeting, and I'm ready to negotiate. I have packed many shirts, and it takes as long as it is needed. I have one main point. It is our security and our existence as a credible union. We need strong decisions here. We have to show our unity. On Ukraine, situation is difficult, and that's why we need 3 decisions. First, on EPF, we need multi-annual decision on that. They need fast military assistance. Secondly, we need solution on MMF, 50 billion tool to help Ukraine. And thirdly, we need decision on enlargement. We need clear signal to the all states who want to be the member of the Union that we are ready to negotiate, and we have to decide to start negotiations. And finally, I have to say that Russia's threat is real. That's why we have to boost our defense industry. For example, in Finland, we have decided to doubling our own ammunition. And we have helped Ukraine more than 2 billion euros. And we have to do all more as a union, as a member states.
What would be the signal?
Viktor Orban blackmailing
Sorry.
the EU?
What's possible?
Is Viktor Orban blackmailing the EU?
We cannot accept any blackmailing. We have to find decision together.
But he received 10 billion euros yesterday.
I think that Commission have to do their work and decide very carefully what they are doing. But we cannot do any compromise on the rule of law.
Would you be in favor?
Georgia is waiting this week political decision to candidates.
We are supporting.
What would be the signal to Putin if you don't reach an agreement here at the council?
Yes. What we decide or what we does not decide is clear signal to Moscow, to Kiev, to Washington, to Beijing. And that's why we have to decide that we support Ukraine. Thank you. Tästä tulee erittäin tärkeä historiallinen kokous. Se, mitä me päätetään tai mitä me ei päätetä, se on selkeä viesti Kiovaan, Moskovaan, Washingtoniin, Pekingiin. Mutta minulla on täällä vain yksi tavoite, ja Suomella. Se on se, että me tehdään vahvoja päätöksiä, jolla me tuetaan Ukrainaa, ja se koostuu 3 elementistä. Ensinnäkin
first of all, we have to keep supporting Ukraine. Estonia made last week a pledge to support Ukraine militarily for at least 4 coming years with 0.25% of our GDP. Plus, short-term military aid. I think this is very important that we do this so that Ukraine can win this war. And of course, today we have several discussions related to this. One is the financial support, the 50 billion for Ukraine. So we have to reach an agreement there, and then the other part is the enlargement issue. How are the negotiations open for Ukraine and Moldova? And we are going to have long discussions there. I just had a talk with Viktor Orban, and he's next, so I will be short. I promised him, so you can ask him questions. But he said that he doesn't see an agreement right now on this. He does not. So we have tried, but we will try again. So try to convince, try to negotiate, and and so not ready to give up yet.
How frustrated are you? How frustrated are you?
Madam Prime Minister, how are you going to convince us?
Well, we have the discussions. I mean, different arguments, different proposals, also compromises. I will not run ahead of the negotiations that we have upcoming. So we're going to have different bilaterals and also discussion around the table.
Yes,
What if you fail? What signal would that send to Moscow if you fail here?
We definitely have to reach some kind of agreement, and we don't have the time to really procrastinate or look at, push it to the future. But it's definitely a bad signal. I hope that we can get agreement at least on some of the elements that are on the line. And as Commission has come up with the report that is merit-based, of course it's a political decision on our side, but we should stick to the report. Ukraine has fulfilled the criteria to open the accession talks, and the accession talks take several years. We know from our own history.
Yesterday you said you were not very optimistic. After the talk with Orban, are you a little bit more?
Not optimistic, no.
Not at all? And can you tell us...
What they will see the 26 coming together rather than 27 for the 50 billion?
Right now, let's focus on the Plan A because we are still, before the negotiations right now. If we don't reach an agreement, then we can think about what other options are there. But
Madam Prime Minister, will you discuss three countries or issue of three countries in the future together, or can you discuss separately Georgia? We are waiting for candidates.
We are discussing all the countries separately and together as well. This is all the proposals that are on the table. So we need to reach. This is on the list. But the biggest problem is around Ukraine and Moldova. So let's see how that goes. But I really promised Victor that I'll be short.
Good morning, Prime Minister.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How many billions? Good morning.
Some questions are being
tagságról beszélünk, akkor a magyar álláspont azt mondja, hogy ez egy érdemalapú, szofisztikált jogi eljárás, vannak feltételei, ezek nem teljesültek, nincs abban a helyzetben a tanács, hogy döntsön, jöjjünk vissza később, amikor ez mármint a feltételek azok teljesülnek. Ebből nem fogunk elmozdulni, akármi is az ajánlat.
Hatalmas a nyomásgyakorlás, itt már maratoni hosszúságú uniós csúcsról beszélnek. Mi az a mozgástér, ameddig kompromisszum tekintetében esetleg elmennek, és vannak-e szövetségesek?
Hát a magyar genetikailag nem érzékeli a nyomást, tehát az bennünket olyan nagyon nem befolyásol, nekünk álláspontunk van, azt fogjuk képviselni. Szövetségesek. Mindig vannak. Persze, de most nem Ukrajnáról van szó, hanem az Európai Unió bővítéséről. Most megyek még oda. Most kezdődik. Georgia is okay, it's done.
Will you support 50 billion for Ukraine today?
The money for Ukraine in short term is already in the budget. If we would like to give longer term and bigger money, we have to manage outside the budget, and we support it.
Will you support that doesn't mean
is done for Georgia?
Everybody loves you. Enlargement is not a theoretical issue. Enlargement is a merit-based, legally detailed process, which has preconditions. We have set up 7 preconditions, and even by the evaluation of the Commission, 3 out of the 7 is not fulfilled. So there is no reason to negotiate membership of Ukraine now, even not to negotiate.
Issues on which you will agree and there will be consensus.
The preconditions were set up not by Hungary. Preconditions were set up by the Commission. 7 points, which is public.
But
and out of
and
no. Precondition is precondition. Out of 7, 3 was not fulfilled. In my estimation, even more. But even 3 is enough to say, the guys, if you haven't fulfilled the preconditions, there is no chance to start to negotiate.
Yes. Is it possible?
Hungary received 10 billion euros from the European Commission yesterday. From what you're saying, that amount is not enough to convince you today to say 50 billion to Ukraine.
The first is to get is better late than never. Second, why we are here is not to make business. It's not about bargain. It's not about deal. We represent approaches and principles. So to give money to Ukraine is easy to do because in short term the money for Ukraine is already in the budget. So there is no any extra decision to give it in short term. In long term and the bigger sum of money, my position is that we should give it outside. But we are not under the pressure of the time because the bridging solution is already in the budget. So and plus Hungary does not connect any Hungarian issue to any Ukrainian or other issue. It's not our style.
Mr. Arpai, the 50 billion are supposed to start next year, so that's in the short term until 2027.
Next year, you mean?
Yes.
But that will be a European election. Why we are not behaving democratically to wait the new leadership, you know?
Mr. Arpai.
Which one?
Both proposals by country.
So the first is membership, yeah? Okay. We set up 7 preconditions, and in the evaluation of the Commission, 3 out of the 7 is not fulfilled. So therefore, there is no reason to discuss anything, because preconditions were not met. So we have to come back later on, revert to that issue again, when it is fulfilled by the Ukrainians. We discuss the enlargement of Europe, which is a legal procedure, which merit-based.
Why are you against it? Why are you against accession of Ukraine?
No, we insist on the procedure we have to follow always, previously as well. Preconditions, when the candidate fulfilled it, let's start to negotiate a membership. But it was not fulfilled even by the evaluation of the Commission, so we are not in a position to start to negotiate.
The Commission says they will be ready by March.
Godmorgon på er.
Good morning, Tisha. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. A quick word over here, please. Would you mind coming back?
I better speak to the Irish first.
Okay.
Devant les petits micros et tout ça.
Faire le tour.
Hi, I kick off.
Just on the question of Viktor Orban and the money for Hungary, I mean, Ireland being a net contributor to the EU, do you agree that 10 billion should have been granted to Hungary without any real compliance with the EU law?
Yeah, so I actually discussed this morning with President von der Leyen and also with Commissioner Hahn, and the rules are the rules. Hungary is entitled to certain monies, and they're linked to certain rules, and if they fulfil the criteria, the money flows. And we're a country that always talks to other countries about the importance of upholding the rule of law, and in this case it's the European Union that had to obey its own rules. The timing is not good because, of course, the perception is that this is some sort of incentive to Hungary to support certain positions, an incentive that mightn't even work, but that's actually not the case. The rules are the rules. Hungary fulfilled the criteria required to unlock this aspect of the 30 billion, and that's why it's been allocated.
But Hungary still has the potential to veto the beginning of accession talks to Ukraine. How damaging would that be?
Well, I've been attending European Council meetings for 6 or 7 years now. This is probably one of the most important ones that I've attended, precisely because of the big decisions we have to make in relation to Ukraine. A financial decision and also a decision on whether to begin negotiations. And we have to say yes to at least one of those two, and ideally both of those two, because Ukraine is in peril. Ukraine will not stand without support and ongoing support from both the European Union and the US, the two towers of freedom and democracy in the world. And if Ukraine doesn't have support from the EU and the US, well, then Putin will win. and all of the consequences that flow for the world after that. So that's why this meeting is so important. We must come away here with the financial package for Ukraine that is sustainable, that gives them the assurance that they will be funded for the next few years if needs be, and sends that very clear message to the Kremlin as well. And then also I'll be very strongly supporting the opening of negotiations. It might take many years for Ukraine to join the European Union, but we should begin negotiations next year. And I know from speaking to President Zelensky that matters on the front line. Soldiers who've been fighting on the front line for Europe, for Ukraine, this will really count in terms of their morale. So this is a really important meeting. Well, take Sean first, that's okay. Well, we'll be pushing for strong wording on Gaza coming out of the summit. Certainly stronger wording than was in place in October. I think the position of European countries has been evolving. At the UN the other day, Ireland was in the majority of EU countries, 17 voting for a ceasefire, only 2 voting against. So I think the centre of gravity within the European Union is moving closer to the position that Ireland has taken for some time, but still needs to move further, in my view. What I'll be saying to European leaders here is that I think the European Union has lost credibility because of our inability to take a stronger and more united position on Israel and Palestine. We've lost credibility with the global south, which actually is most of the world, because what is perceived to be double standards, and there's some truth in that, quite frankly. And secondly, I think there's a major issue with young people and credibility that the European Union has among young people. We know how strongly young people feel about climate, and they also feel really strongly about the issue of Israel-Palestine. The majority of voters under 40 in the US, as well as the EU, now having more sympathy with Palestinians than with Israelis. That's a significant change, and European leaders need to be wise to that. And that's why I think we need to have strong wording that condemns terrorism perpetrated by Hamas, but also calls for humanitarian ceasefire and calls for justice for Palestinian people, which is a two-state solution which the European Union should be pushing and demanding, not just calling for.
It's a great pleasure for me to be here for my first European Council. I think it will be a very tough one. I'm used to international meetings due to my previous time as Minister of Finance and Minister of Justice. And I'm leading now a government that is clearly pro-European. It is pro-European because we believe that our stability, our security, our prosperity depends on a strong European Union. And therefore the meeting that we had last night with the Western Balkans, the meeting that we will have today on the opening of accession talks with several countries, in particular with Ukraine, have to be seen in the same bigger picture. That is to say that without a strong European Union based on the same values, based on the same objectives, we will not be able to ensure peace and stability on this continent. When I was listening last night to the positions of the European Union and of the Balkans, the Western Balkans, it reminded me of my time when we did the enlargement of the European Union in 2004. It had the same objective, making sure that democracy, peace and stability is guaranteed for decades to come. That is what is at stake today. It's not about one country or another. It's about stability, security, democracy. And indeed, it matters what happens to Ukraine. If we give up our support for Ukraine, the political support, all the financial support, then we lose and we give up on our fundamental principles. And that is why the government I have the pleasure to lead will support Ukraine. The government that I am leading will support further integration of the European Union and will support a reasonable package for the midterm review of the financial framework. I will support all the proposals of the European Commission, which has the right know-how to analyze the situation on the ground. I think all those countries, independent of their degree of development vis-à-vis the European achievements, need to be part of the European family for the reason I just explained.
Macht Sie das wütend, dass Herr Orban hier alles blockiert?
Das macht mich sehr traurig, wenn das dann so ist. Ich werde natürlich heute zum ersten Mal dem ungarischen Premierminister bei diesem Europäischen Rat zuhören. Ich glaube, zur europäischen Geschichte und zum europäischen Umgang gehört auch, dass man jemandem zuhört. Aber es muss so sein, dass wenn es eine fast Einstimmigkeit gibt, um vorwärts zu kommen, dass dann jeder auch kompromissbereit sein muss. Und das erwarte ich auch, vor allem bei solch einem fundamentalen Thema wie dem Beitritt und den Beitrittsgesprächen für die Ukraine, aber auch für die anderen Staaten aus der Region. Und wenn man sieht, was also auf dem Spiel steht, dass jeder sich da kompromissbereit gibt.
Ist das Vorgehen von Orban aus Ihrer Sicht im Prinzip egoistisch, also politisch oder finanziell getrieben? Oder versucht er wirklich der Ukraine zu schaden und Putin zu helfen?
Das kann ich zu diesem Zeitpunkt nicht beurteilen, weil ich ja seine Argumente nur aus den Medien kenne. Ich möchte also heute Morgen zuhören. Ich hoffe aber, dass jedes Land, auch Ungarn und andere Länder, denen wir damals 2004 geholfen haben, in der Europäischen Union beizutreten, um auch dort die Demokratie, die Stabilität für Jahrzehnte zu stärken, dass diese Länder und insbesondere auch Herr Orban sich daran erinnert, wenn es hier darum geht, der Ukraine, Georgien, Moldawien und zum Teil auch Bosnien-Herzegowina in dieser Philosophie auch jetzt zu unterstützen, in einem kruzialen Moment dieses schrecklichen Konflikts in der Ukraine.
Was würde es bedeuten, wenn das nicht klappt?
Ich hoffe noch immer, dass es klappt. Ich gehe mit Optimismus in diesen Rat hinein.
Könnte es ein Kompromiss sein, die Verhandlungen vielleicht erst im Juni zu starten?
Ich glaube, wir sollten jetzt alles daran setzen, heute zu schauen, dass wir zu einem guten Ergebnis kommen. Vielen Dank.
Was wäre denn das Signal an Putin?
viable down the line forever, but at the same time, are we as Ireland willing to give up our veto on issues that it might suit us on? So we need to see that from both sides of it. I believe we need reform of the way the European Union works, but we also need to be understanding of the fact that if we move away from unanimity to majority voting, we will be on the losing side of some votes. And are we yet comfortable with that? And we just need to be aware of that paradigm. So, thank you. So, do you mean the US or the EU?
The US, yes, if they fail to approve.
Well, look, I think the most important thing that we need to decide here today and this weekend is that long-term financial support for Ukraine will be coming from the European Union. I don't think it's for us to tell the Americans to support Ukraine unless we as Europeans are willing to support Ukraine. Ukraine's a European country, and I think that really has to be the outcome of this meeting, because if you think about it, the US, the EU, these are the two towers of freedom and democracy in the world. If we can't support Ukraine throughout 2024, Putin will win. And I can't even begin to contemplate the consequences for the world, for all of us, if that were to happen. So this is a really important meeting and a really big decision to be made.
The agenda, but there's doesn't matter about international pressure. So what we can do now?
Well, I believe Prime Minister Netanyahu is wrong in that assessment. What matters is the opinion of the international community, the view of the United States, and I'm encouraged by some of the remarks by President Biden in recent weeks, but also public opinion in Israel, which is not so supportive of Prime Minister Netanyahu at the moment. So certainly what I'll be pushing for very strongly here is language from the European Union that condemns terrorism and the actions of Hamas unequivocally, calls for a ceasefire so that we can relieve the enormous suffering of the Palestinian people, but also puts Europe very firmly behind a two-state solution. Things have changed. There has to be a major peace initiative leading to a two-state solution, and Europe needs to be behind that and put pressure and also encouragement on Israel and Palestine to make that happen.
Apart from encouragement, what will Europe do?
Well, I think there are a number of things we can do. We can continue to increase our humanitarian support for Palestine, and we are doing that. That's been more than trebled. Very important that money flows. Another thing we can do, and Ireland is among the countries saying this should happen, is to begin to put travel bans and sanctions on not just on the funders of Hamas, but also on Israeli settlers involved in violence against Palestinians in the West Bank. Over 250 Palestinians killed in the West Bank in the last 2 months, not an area controlled by Gaza, and that action is being perpetrated by violent Israeli settlers who are trying to push Palestinians off their land. That's one of the things we can do, and also try to have a more united voice at a UN level as well. So I have to go, but thank you.
Ja, genau.
Hamburg ruht.
This is the primary audience.
对于经常外食的现代人来说，实在很难确保每天能摄取到足够好菌，也因此越来越多人选择在生活中补充益生菌来帮助肠道健康平衡。但市面上这么多的益生菌该怎么选呢？挑选具有专利认证菌株最重要。面对换季引起的干痒红肿，能调整体质的太阳星全效克菲尔益生菌就是一个稳定健康基础的好选择。金三角全效配方让肠道增加好菌。美国国立卫生研究院收录多篇学术报告，也证实了克菲尔的重要性。每天1包就是健康维持的好选择。如果你也想尝试，请上快点购健康下单，输入推荐代码，还可以享有额外优惠哦。每日克菲尔，让您的生活更健康美好。